Hi, everybody. Chris Pies here for another PCA Sim Racing Classroom for Season 12. This week we are tackling the fabled Cathedral of Speed at Monza in Italy. This is a track that is long, fast, and not necessarily too complicated, but it does offer some great racing opportunities, some great passing opportunities, and also for those that are nuanced drivers, some real good opportunities to pick up speed and potentially points on your competitors. This is, of course, part of the Season 12 race series that we've had in PCA, and this is the finale, the final race of the season. We've gone everywhere from club tracks in England to club tracks in the United States, and we're ending at an absolute storied track at Monza. A little different than anything we've really raced so far this season. Long straightaways are absolutely paramount, so if you're in the pro or the club class with open setups, expect to see some people running very low downforce to try to take advantage of the straightaways. If you are in the sport or the challenge classes, it's fixed setup, so everybody is on the same foot. So depending on the class will dictate kind of also the strategy you may want to take in the race itself. As I said, Monza is not too terribly complicated in terms of number of turns you need to learn. Two of them are very similar chicanes. Two of them are very similar right-handers. And then ultimately we have one, what I would call complex of turns with a Scari. And then one final big, long kind of sweeper with not Curva Grande, with whatever the final corner is called here at Monza. So we'll jump into it. Like I said, speed is key here at Monza. Maintaining that speed will net you really good lap times. Losing momentum or racing too much and going side by side in some of these tight corners can cost you a ton of time at Monza. So be sure that when you go side by side with an opponent, you are ready to you're ready to make that challenge one work, and two, you're ready to take the time cost that it would be to get around that person. And we'll go back over that a little bit more detail, what I mean by that at the end. But let's get straight into the track walk so we can get some eyes on Monza. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab my fast lap from this little session that I did. And for me, the setup that I ran is I just ran the iRacing Monza setup. So it's not fixed high downforce, and it's also not a custom setup. It is an iRacing setup at the end of the day. So it's kind of this little in between. I think the wing was 8. So I would classify it maybe as a medium downforce type setup. So I'm sure there will be people that run super low downforce here, and there are people that will run high downforce and everything in between, and that will dictate who's faster in what sections of the track. So coming down the front straightaway at Monza, it is one of the longest straightaways that we've got. The big thing that you need to pay attention to is the pit exit and blend line from pit exit, denoted by this solid line that's up here in front of us currently. You've got a little bit of a dotted line that transitions into a solid blend line that goes forever down the straightaway, down into the first chicane. If there is a car coming out of pit lane and they are on the right side of the blend line like they should be, they have the right of way. So, if you are trying to make a pass on somebody and try to drag race somebody, and you're in the right lane and you're going to be crossing the blend line, be wary of a car that may be exiting pit lane. You need to yield to them. They do not need to yield to you. So just be mindful, keep your eyes up, look for traffic coming out of pit lane. Don't get caught out over here on the right side trying to pass someone when there's a slower car coming out, because what'll end up happening is you'll get picked. The person you're racing, if they're being especially feisty, will basically force you to go right behind the slower car and force you to slow down or crash into them. If you do make contact on a car coming out of pit lane, it is your fault if you are coming up behind them. Also, if you are coming out of pit lane, remember there is a blend line, as we just discussed. You need to honor that. If you cross the blend line too early to try to set up for turn 1, you will get penalized by iRacing. It won't even be a steward thing. Automatic black flag from iRacing, which will be the equivalent of a drive-through. if you cross this one line. So make sure when you come out of pit lane, you are going all the way down to, there's a blue cone way down at the end and a blue line where the blend line effectively ends, and then you can move over, and don't move over before then. But assuming there's nobody in the pit out, we are coming up to the first chicane. The key here is we need to pick a consistent brake marker that we can hit. There's really good braking markers available to us on the way into turn one. We have not only number boards, but we also have some shrubbery on the left. That is a really good point, at least for me, for braking. A couple things about the Cup car. First lap and second lap, your tires and the temperature in the tires are cold. You're not going to be able to brake as effectively as later on in the race as fuel burns off the car gets lighter, and your tires are hotter. So those first couple laps, take it easy, kind of go gingerly into the brake zone. Don't try to go absolute threshold to where you would normally go on a very hot car, because you'll find yourself locking up the wheels. Brake early on those first 2 laps, brake a little softer. Make sure you are familiar or you're comfortable with where you need to brake in order to slow the car down effectively for turn 1. So for me, on these laps and these conditions, I was braking at effectively the beginning of this hedge. So it's like the 175 marker, if there was one. So I am using this hedge over here on the left as my zone, or as my kind of point of brake, and I am braking very, very hard in this car, and you'll see in the telemetry. So as we come into turn 1, boom, front of the bushes, brakes. I'm going to about an 80% brake pedal to try to get this car to slow down. While the Cup car doesn't have a lot of aerodynamics, it does have a little bit of aero. That aerodynamics is going to be effective at the highest speeds of the car. So when you first hit that brake zone, you're traveling the fastest that this car will be traveling, which means that you'll have the most aerodynamic help on the car. The car will be pushed into the ground via the aero. This will enable you to hit the brakes harder than you would if you were going slower. So the way it's going to look is it's going to look like a very hard initial brake pedal, and that should be your peak brake. And then from that point, you should be trailing off as the car is slowing down and approaching turn 1. And then as you turn in for turn 1, your brakes should lessen as you turn the wheel into when you get to your maximum steering angle. You should be pretty much off the brakes. So here we are, 80% brake pedal coming all the way in. We're going to keep the car all the way left. And the goal of the chicanes, both of them, is not the entry turn, not this turn 1. It is to set up for turn 2. We want to maximize our run coming out of the second part of the chicane, which leads onto a big long straightaway. We don't want to maximize the turn 1 because it's just a little run between the 2 turns. So the first one is the throwaway. The second one is the one that matters. So what does that look like? Well, we're going to turn in somewhere about halfway down the green AstroTurf section. We're going to turn in and we're going to get all up on this curb. And the goal is left side tires on the track, left of the white line, but the rest of the car over the curbing. Your right side tires can nibble this orange piece of curbing that has no real effect on the car. But if you put all 4 tires over the white line here, you're going to get a slowdown. You won't even get a 1X, I found out. You'll just straight get a slowdown. So keep in mind that it's a bit of a risk reward. The more you chew off, or the more you take off of this first corner, the more you can keep the car to the right. But if you do it too much, you're going to get hit with a 2-second slowdown coming out of the chicane, which will just kill your lap time. So how much you want to take off is depending on your risk tolerance. So if you're leading the race and you're having no competition, you're probably keeping half your car on the track and not even flirting with it. If you're trying to chase somebody down,
that slowdown is like 6 seconds.
Well, it depends on where you get it. If you go straight through the chicane, it's like a 5 or 6 second slowdown. If you cut like over here in turn 2, it's about a 2.5 second slowdown. If you clip this one, it can be anywhere from 2 to 1.5 seconds. So they are different, but the fact of the matter is you don't want any slowdown whatsoever. So the key is just don't get it. Make sure you're keeping your left side tires on the track. But this one is a very easy one to get when you're not even trying. Obviously, if you go too deep into turn 2, the second part of the chicane, you cut it. You're going to get a slowdown. This one can surprise you, and it can creep up on you if you're too aggressive. But the idea is we can pinch this corner as best we can. We don't want to go past half track because we're immediately going to have to start turning the car to the left as soon as we go through the right. And the goal is to try to set up this left-hander as best as possible. If we go too deep on the first turn and we end up all the way over here on track left, we have to stop the car effectively to get around turn 2. So take it nice and as wide as you can. Pinch the first one so you can open up the second one. I'm in first gear through here, and it's a lot of throttle modulation coming out. If you just slam on the gas in first gear, you're going to spin up your rear tires and either spin or just be slow. You need to, as you have a lot of steering angle, not have a lot of throttle. And then as you open your hands coming through the corner, then you can add more and more accelerator on your way out. Another effective way to kind of manage the traction coming out of turn 2 would be to take the whole chicane in second gear. Less torque going through the tires, less RPMs, less likelihood of spinning the tires. I found that first gear, I tend to get a little bit of a squirt coming out of the corner, so I found it being a little quicker, but if you spin up the tires, it's going to be slower. So try both, see how they feel. I found first gear works really well for me. Leave a little bit of room as you're starting to track out, because when you go to throttle in first gear, like I said, if those tires do slip a little bit, the entire back of the car is going to kind of slide out to the right. And if you are tracking out and you're just straightening up on that curbing and then you get to throttle and the car steps out a little bit with oversteer, you're going to put your right side tires in the gravel, which is going to slow you down. So make sure you leave a little bit of room, so if it does step out a little bit, you've got track and room to open your hands and counter steer into that slide like I got right here. So as you can see here, on my way out, the car steps out a little bit. I can catch it because I've got a little bit of room left to be able to get a good run coming out of the corner. So let's back it up and show what it looks like without me stopping it. We're going to brake at the beginning of the bushes, firm brake, bleeding off brake pressure all the way down. As we turn in, bleed more off, take the curb, not too much, mid-track, turn in, downshift to first gear, open our hands, apply the accelerator nice and easy, and get a good run coming out of the chicane. Now the first chicane is a lot narrower and tighter than the second chicane, so they are different in addition to going different directions. The second chicane is more speed, as we'll see in a second. So coming around the fast sweeping turn 3, it's absolutely flat. We want to obviously make as short a distance as we can through this big curve. So that's why I'm keeping the car all the way to the right. It's common to get a run coming out of the chicane with maybe your competitor, which will lead you to either being on the left side or left of them and taking a slightly longer approach around the corner. Unless you have a really big run on your opponent, they're going to be taking a much shallower line, which means they're going to be traveling less distance. So you have to have a couple of mile an hour difference to even overcome that distance gap that you're giving them. So be aware of that if you're traveling around the outside. Also be aware that the further left you get on that corner, the more marbles and build up over time will happen, and the less grip you may have out there, especially with iRacing's new debris system that they're introducing, which none of us know exactly how it's going to work. If they're staying true to life, the further left you get, the nastier it's going to be in terms of traction, and it may be a situation where this car may understeer or oversteer out there. So try to stay on line as best you can, but understand that trying to pass around the outside is you're going the long way around.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Question. So on turn 2, I kind of expected you to take a little more curb.
Yes. So two schools of thought on the curb. If you take the curb on the left here, like this orange curb, which I believe Johan is mentioning, the car is kind of up in the air, right? It's not flat, which means it's going to delay your ability to get to throttle. As you can see here, I've already started kind of picking up the throttle. I'm picking up the throttle, and I'm got a pretty good amount of throttle here. If I go over this curbing, I can't get on throttle because one wheel is in the air and not fully in contact with the racing surface, and the other one's down on the ground. So if I apply this amount of throttle up on this curb, I'm going to spin the car. So you have to wait. However, if you do take the curbing, it is a little bit of a shorter distance. The curbing can actually help turn the car if you need it. So if you can get up on the curbing, it can act kind of as a way to rotate the car mid-corner. But just understand you don't want to be getting on very much throttle when half your car is up in the air and bouncing up and down. So you're going to have to wait for the car to come back down, settle, before you can realistically start adding throttle. I'm finding in the Cup car that, one, it's difficult to get down to this curve, to be frank. It tends to understeer. So the front end, you've got to turn in what feels like super early already, and then turning in even earlier just doesn't feel comfortable. And the second aspect of it is I just like to have both rear tires on the ground to allow me to go to throttle sooner. I'm not struggling keeping the car clean on the exit, so I don't need that additional turn by hitting that curb. You may be able to go a little quicker if you hit that curb or carry some more momentum because you're opening the quarter a little bit more. Just give it a try. I just don't feel comfortable with it, and that's why I stay off of it.
What about the green and white part of the curb? Will you get the bounce there?
Oh, you mean they're here on the inside or track side of the yellow curb?
Yeah.
No, you won't. And that's the ultimate goal, is to try to get as close to the yellow curb or orange curb as you can. On this particular lap, I missed it by a tire width. So I'm trying to get down there. I just didn't on this particular occasion. I'm human. But great question. All right, so coming into the second chicane, around the corner, again, good brake markers all around. We've got signboards. We've got this overhanging bridge structure that we see, which can be used as a brake marker. For me, I was braking basically as soon as I felt like the front end of the car was at the structure. It's a little bit earlier that I'm braking, but basically the structure has crossed my windshield banner and I no longer see it. That's when I'm hitting my brake marker. Much like turn one, it is full on 10 pedal, not ABS. I'm not getting into ABS, of course, but I'm braking as hard as I feel like I can in the car before wheel lock up. The goal with the second set of chicane is the first one was slow the car down and really pinch that first corner to set up for the second corner. My thought coming into the second chicane is get off the brakes and carry my momentum to the first left-hander so I can get on throttle sooner and maintain my speed through the second right-hander. The left-hander here is almost the more important one because the squirt or the straightaway coming out of the second chicane is not nearly as long. So keeping some speed through the first left-hander, because you just came off this big long straight, is pretty effective. You also have more room between the two corners than you did in the first chicane, so you can carry more speed over this left-hander. You also can bite a lot more of it off than you imagine. So really, really attack this curve, and you'll see what I mean here. So as I brake, I'm downshifting. I am downshifting to second gear, not first gear, and I'm keeping second gear through here. As you can see, I am up all the way up on this curb, and I wish that fence wasn't right there, so we're going to zoom in a little bit to get rid of that fence. Okay, so you can see how much of this curbing I am attacking. I am all four wheels over the white line effectively, and this is not a 1X. I'm not totally sure where the 1X is because I kept cutting more and more of it off and still was not getting it. According to the rules, which is this little tab right here, the corner apex is the edge. On corner apex, the edge of the red, white, green curbing. So the red, white, green curbing is the curbing that is right here before the solid green. It's showing that the inside of this, so I think it's half your car. Your car is considered within the track limits if half the car is within the boundaries of the track. Okay, so bisect your car right down the middle. As long as the middle point on your car is on this curbing, it shouldn't be a 1X. You should be on track. If the middle point of your car is crossing over the curbing mark, according to the rules, that will give you a 1x and potentially a slowdown. So keep the middle point of your car on this curbing. Another way to think of it is, as we're driving, because we're on the left side of the car, make sure your driver isn't crossing over into the green, and you should be safe. So if I am in the cockpit and I'm coming through here, put myself basically right on this line. So you can clobber it that much and be perfectly safe. The thing to say about this curbing is it's relatively smooth in the sense that all four wheels are you're kind of going over it. It's not a shock into the chassis. You're not bouncing the car up like the next one we're going to see. It's more of a ramp. So it's much more subtle and makes it okay to kill this corner. You're also not really accelerating between these two corners too terribly much. So you don't, the need to get to throttle isn't there coming out of the corner. So as we land and we have steering angle, we can pick up throttle. And then if we do it right, we'll end up about mid-track to set up a right-hand turn, much like turn 1, except there is a little bit more room. You can carry more speed through here. And I was finding clobbering this corner is going to, one, put a shock into the car, but it is quicker than keeping it tidy and keeping all four wheels on the car or on the ground. So as we cross over the second one, we're going to get a shock into the car. You're going to go 2 wheels up. Just make sure that you're ready on the back end when the car lands, that you're going to have that wheel relatively straight. So when it lands, you're not going to spin. And then once it lands and the suspension settles, then you can put full throttle through it and accelerate through. If you don't hit this curbing and you keep it nice and clean, you can get to throttle sooner, but you're not going to be able to carry as much speed through the corner. So we can carry more speed because we're cutting the corner a bit. If you don't cut the corner, you can't go as fast because you have a tighter radius to go around. Thus, you're going to be slower, but you will be able to accelerate sooner. So there's your trade-off between the two. What I will say through here is find what you're comfortable with. If you're not comfortable with only 2 wheels on the ground, then don't clobber this corner. If you're hitting this curb hard, and you're having trouble keeping control of the car on the backside of the curbing, don't hit the curb. Do what you can to make sure you're not spinning out or you're not fighting the car on the exit. If you're comfortable with a big bump and getting control of the car on the backside of the curb, great. Hit the curb all day long. You'll find that's faster probably. But it's what you as a driver is most comfortable with is what's going to make you go fast through here, not the ideal line that a pro may use, because that doesn't work for everybody. So keep that in mind. So if we back it up back to the bridge, show what it looks like. Brake just before the bridge, downshift to second gear. We're going to turn in just after, or right about halfway on the curbing, get all up on this first curb, turn in, clobber the second curb if we're comfortable with it, let the car settle, and then back on full throttle using this exit curbing as a little bit of reserve track to get the car straight and get a good run coming out in second gear. All right, any questions on the first 2 chicanes? Okay, hearing none. We'll continue. Let me make sure my camera looks a little sideways. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. All right, now we're coming up to the first of the right-handers. They're very similar. These 2 double right-handers, turn 5 and turn 6, are very similar. Or turn 6 and turn 7 are very similar. But they play a little bit differently. The first right-hander, you have to exercise more patience. It is a higher radius corner, so it lasts longer. The second right-hander is more of a kink, or an exaggerated kink, than a big turn. So the first one's going to be slower than the second one. So what we're going to do is we're going to brake. What makes turn 6 difficult is there is no braking marker. There's no signboardage. There's no tree to really see. it's kind of what it looks like to you as a driver and what it feels like. So it's kind of intuitive. You may be able to use this orange bit on the Armco here, but even then, it's way out here, and you're going to be braking very earlier than it. So you're basically looking at that and trying to make a judgment on how far away it is when you hit the brakes. You have a tree here that you possibly could use depending on how much field of view you have, but it's way out here on the right. If you're only got one screen, you're not going to see this tree as a brake marker. So it's difficult. That's the hardest part of this corner, is finding a brake marker. Obviously, you want to err on the side of braking too early than too late for this corner, because the goal is we want to maintain balance on this corner, on this entry. We do have a lot of camber. We want to get down to the curbing relatively quickly to take advantage of the camber, but at the same time, we also want to late apex the corner, so we can get a good accelerating run out of turn 6. So the goal is a decent initial brake, but quickly, so I'm at about maybe 70-75% brake pressure, and then quickly bleed off the brakes and try to maintain the car's momentum. Let that camber help the car through the initial part of the corner while we're coming down to the curbing. The apex of the corner is this little service road that we still can't see yet. It's around the corner. We want the car to get down basically at this service road is our apex. When we know we're going to put our right side tires on this curb, on this service road, or on the curbing leading up to the service road, we can be pretty confident that we can get on a lot of throttle coming out and the car will be okay on exit. As we exit, we have a lot of runoff. We can use it so long as we keep our right side tires on the curbing. We're fine. Obviously, if you don't have to drive the car all the way out here. Only go out here as far as the car needs to go out here. So if we back it up and we take a look again, what this looks like, turn in, your eyes need to be up. That's the only way you're going to get through this. You're looking for that service road, that apex point, then you're looking for the track out point, and you're looking way down the road. You will drive to where you're looking. Third gear through there. The second right-hander, we're going to brake just before the 50 mark, and it is a light brake. It is just to kind of set the front end of the car, put some weight on it, and get an early, what feels like an early turn in for this corner. Downshift into third. What we're going to do is we're going to take our right side tires and we are going to try to cut this corner as best as we can. We're going to put our right side tires up and over the curb on this little AstroTurf bit to try to cut the corner, accelerating on our way out, and just like the previous corner, use the curbing as necessary. Beware though, because as you come and off the track here on the exit, the track is cambered and then it kind of tabletops. It's very easy to get oversteer on the way out that you don't expect and you need to correct for. A lot of people will spin here because they don't expect the oversteer when the car goes from a cambered state to a flat state, and they still potentially have steering angle under full throttle. It will spin the car right there. So let me back it up and show it one more time. We're going to brake smooth, get off the brake pretty quickly, eyes up, look for the access road, get on throttle, accelerate out, let the diff do its job, run down to the second right-hander. We're going to brake just before the 50 marker just to scrub some speed, get off the brake, turn in what feels like early, all the way up over the curb, accelerate coming out. Sure to keep your hands quiet for the oversteer coming through there. All right, the run down to Ascari is not really too much to mention. Ascari is the trickiest part of the track and is also the corner that you need to be worried about if you're running a very low downforce setup, because the car is going to try to swap ends on you 3 times. So the goal with Ascari is to get to full throttle as soon as you can for the exit of Ascari, for the final corner in the complex. So there's 3 corners, left-hander, the right-hander, and then the final left-hander. We want to try to get to full throttle and maintain full throttle as early as we can in the complex of corners. That's the goal. So whatever we can do to achieve that is what we need to do. So our brake marker for the first corner is going to basically be this little gantry bridge thing. We're going to brake and slow down from 6th gear down to 4th gear. You can take 3rd gear, but then the car is totally wound up, and I was finding myself as over slowing the car if I went down to 3rd gear. I was finding 4th gear as a better gear for Ascari, even though it was a little low on the RPM, because I found myself short shifting anyway into 4th gear. So try 4th gear, see what you think. If you don't like it and you like 3rd gear better, no big deal. It's whatever feels best for you. But I was finding 4th gear to be better. A decent brake pedal coming in. We're going to trail brake in about halfway down the candy stripe curbing. We're going to get our left side tires all up on this curbing on the left, nibbling the sausages if we can, that middle one, to try to open up this corner, this right-hander. It'll put us on the right side of the corner on the right-hander, but this is where we have to manage our throttle and our car balance through here, because we can't go full throttle at this point and make the next corner. We have to manage as best as we can the car to bring it to basically bring it down to the curbing so we can get to full throttle, to have a good angle coming out of the final corner. And I'll show you what I mean. So I'm turning in here, and you can see that even though I'm on the right side of the track, I'm still bringing the car in tighter than the radius of the corner. I'm not on the curb initially. I am creating a wider arc and attacking it down so I can have a good angle coming out. We're going to get up and basically nibble these sausages, not go over them. If you go over them, you're going to have a bad day. The car is going to bounce around and you're going to have to get out of the throttle. But we can do a little bit of nibble on them. And again, full throttle. I'm already full throttle. We are going to basically drive over this left-hand curbing. Because it's unloaded, it really doesn't do much to the car and the balance. So we're going to we're going to take a pretty big bite out of it. Notice our right side tires are still on the track, so it's not a 1X, but our left side tires did go over this curbing, but I'm 100% flat through there. On exit, nice quiet hands, opening our hands constantly to try to fight the potential for the car, the oversteer coming out of the corner. Use all the curbing, use the access road and the runoff here. This is all part of the track to get a good run coming out. So let me show it again without me starting to stop it. So again, the initial turn on the left turn, we're going to try to keep the car as left as we can, but obviously we're going to want to carry speed. And then you can see right here, I'm still bringing the car in tighter, full throttle to accelerate coming out. This right here at this point, when we get to full throttle, which I'm getting to full throttle right here, this is the important part. This is what you want to see. You want to be here on the right side of the track to open up this left-hander, because this is the corner that matters. The ones previous to it are only setup corners. This is the one that matters, because you lead onto a huge straightaway with a lot of speed coming through here. Any questions about Ascari? Because it's I think probably the most, other than the final corner, the most important corner on the track. But it's also very difficult to get right. All right, hearing none. So 4th gear, try it, see what you think. When we come through here, 5th gear, and then we get a good run coming out. I mean, we're 120 miles an hour coming out of Ascari, coming down a big long straightaway. You're screaming through there. All right, coming up to the final corner. Really good, solid braking areas, good sight lines. We've got this green AstroTurf on the left. We've got a white marker across the track, and we've got boards. My braking part here depends on where we are in the race, how hot my tires are, how much grip I have, how much confidence I have in the car. As over the course of the race, my brake marker can change through here. It is very, very difficult to maintain the same brake zone or same brake point throughout the entire race because of the tires on the Cup car. But on this occasion, I was going a little bit beyond the white marker here. So I was braking just after the white marker. It is a full-on emergency brake in this car without locking up. We're going to turn in early, and we're going to try to maintain the car down on the curbing as best as we can for as long as we can until we get to a power pole that I'll show in a second. So we need to brake, turn in. The car is going to really want to swap ends at this point if you are not modulating your brakes properly. If you kind of just stand on the brakes and then kind of just turn it in and keep too much brake, the rear is going to swap ends, or you're going to lock one of the tires in the rear. You really need to be able to get off that pressure and trail brake effectively in order to maintain the slowdown necessary to get it down to the curbing. Also notice the track. You can see a lot of the track, which means there's actually a decent amount of camber in this corner. The camber is maximum down here at the curbing, and that's why we want to get down to it as quick as possible. If we didn't have this camber, I'd say drive it out deep, get the car turned somewhere out here, and then, you know, get a super long run down the front straightaway. But this camber makes it so we need to get down to the curbing as soon as we can to take advantage of it. We're down on the curbing. I'm in third gear. Here's the power pole I'm talking about, the second one. We want to basically keep the car close to the curbing and only start unwinding our hands once we get past this power pole on the right. Right here, we're at full throttle. The car's trying to step out. We counter that by opening our hands, increasing the radius of the corner as the radius of the corner increases itself. And we're able to maintain control while staying full throttle and accelerating all the way out of the corner. Get a good run on that. You get a good run down the straight all the way into the first turn, and the course repeats. So, any questions?
Hey, could you elaborate on the tires on the Cup car?
Yeah, so the tires on the Cup car are oh my god, that's foggy. The tires on the Cup car are they don't really work very well in the beginning of the race because they are cold. They are really great, I would say, probably from lap 2 to 3 to maybe about lap 7 or so. After about lap 7, they are what I would consider in their hot state. And depending on how you drive, can dictate how much grip you're going to have kind of for the rest of the race. If you're really tough on your tires, meaning you occasionally do a lockup, you slide the car a lot, you're going to add more temperature to the tire, and the tire is going to get outside of its optimal operating temperature. If you take it easy, you brake a little bit earlier and softer, you're not sliding the car coming out of corners, you're going to maintain a little bit of a lower maximum temperature, which means that you're going to be sitting within the operating parameters of the tire. If you drive like that, you'll notice that your braking performance and your performance to get out, your grip overall is going to be higher. So the Cup car has an ability to kind of exaggerate or to show a driver's faults. Again, sliding the car too much is just going to exasperate the sliding. So you slide once, the next time you go through that corner, the grip threshold is going to be lower. You're probably going to slide again because you have even less grip. And then you're going to slide even more because you have even less grip. So with the Cup car, you want to keep your sliding to a minimum. You want to absolutely not lock up, obviously. You want to keep the tires underneath you and don't overdrive the car. The problem is as we race and as we try to chase people down and try to put in a good lap time, we start overdriving the car. And as soon as you start overdriving the Cup car, it's going to punish you, and your lap times are actually going to decrease because you're going to overdrive the tires. So that's the crux of the tires on the Cup car. It just, you don't have traction control, you don't have ABS to kind of cover the sliding, and it will punish you over time if you do that. You'll take the life out of your tires.
Thank you.
Yeah. Another thing about tires, you shouldn't need tires for any of these races, but especially here at Monza. Monza's pretty tame on tires because there's not a lot of corners. It's mostly straightaways. So if you're finding yourself getting low on tire life while you're practicing, you're probably overdriving the car. Great question. Anybody else?
Could you show us the cockpit view of the fast lap?
I am going to do that right now. Okay, here we go. So we're coming out of the final corner. Turn the volume down a little bit. All right, so we're looking to see if anybody's coming out of pit lane. Nobody's coming out of pit lane. We're going to brake at that hedge. Brake, bleed off the brake. First gear. Accelerate, catch the step out. Get a good run coming through. Keep the car all the way to the right, nice and tight. Minimize the distance traveled. We're going to be looking for that bridge. We're going to brake just before it. We're going to go down to second gear, use all that curbing on the left, and then use a lot of curbing on the right if we're comfortable with it. Second gear, use the curbing. Catch the car on the end and accelerate out. Eyes up, brake what feels comfortable. Get the car down to the service road, accelerate out of it. Brake before the 50 board, use all the curbing on the inside, accelerate out, carry our momentum through. Minimize the distance traveled on these little left-hand turn. So keep it nice and left. Keep the wheel straight so we're not scrubbing speed. We're going to brake at the bridge, down to fourth gear. Turn in, all the curbing. Bring it in, now full throttle, use the curbing on the exit, opening our hands so we can accelerate out. Check our mirrors, check our gauges, check our fuel. Get ready for the final braking zone. We're going to brake just after the white line, all the way down to third gear. Keep it nice and tight. Look for the telephone pole, there it is. Accelerate out, opening our hands so the car will accept that acceleration. And run it through. And that is a lap of Monza. Another thing that's good, and I did it here on this 51, is to practice alternate lines. Because we're racing after all, and we've got people around us. So for instance, coming into turn one, let's say we try to make a pass on somebody. So we pop out at right at the braking zone to try to make a pass on someone. But look what happens. We're going to brake at the same point. Boom. Exact same point, maybe even a little earlier than we were on our fast lap. But look what this does. Because we're attacking at such a shallow angle, when we turn in, it's really difficult to get this car to hug the left side. So what happens? We tend to run a little bit deep, right? And if there was a car on our outside, we would have bounced into them. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to leave room, but still try to pretend I'm out braking someone. And even I here, right here, is just like, oh my goodness, emergency. Try to stop the car. Don't spin it. Don't take someone out. And then at this point, I'm going so slow. I'm 30 miles an hour. I still got to get the car over to the left somehow, hoping that my little dive bomb past that other guy so I can keep it nice and tight. If he's still there, I've already doored him, and I'd have to go wide coming through the second corner. When I came through this corner like this, I was 0.6 slower than my fast lap through one set of corners. So that's what I mean by, trying to make your passes. If you're getting past or you're doing the passing, try to determine if this is what you want. Do you want to give the field 0.6 of a second because you're going to try to fight somebody through one of the chicanes? Or if somebody's attacking you, for instance, and they pop out to pass, sometimes it's just prudent to lift, let them go, and take as good a line as they can so they're not slow. And you follow them through, and then you maybe get them later on in the lap. Or you conserve fuel and pass them in the pit lane. Things like that. But fighting somebody tooth and nail, at best, you lose time to the field. At worst, you guys door each other because it's really hard through those chicanes to go too wide. So be smart about that. I did the same thing on the next chicane. Come into the next chicane. Braking offline here, as though if somebody was on my right that I was passing someone, brake. This just puts me at such a bad angle for this initial left-hander that if somebody tried to take it too wide, there's no room for them, right? We're going to end up, somebody's going to end up making contact with somebody else at this point right here. And that's just how these chicanes are built. They're just not built for too wide racing. So be smart about that. And then the final area that I tried this was in the final corner, because this is another popular area to get a run through a Scari and try to pass somebody coming into this final corner. Again, super shallow. I still got to slow the car down. I got to get it down to the curbing. You can make it stick through here if you can somehow do a little what they call a slide job. So you get in there, you kind of pass them, and then you kind of slow up and you slide the car, and they can't accelerate through you because you're in the way. You can make that work, but you're going to be slow all the way down this long straight. You're going to give the field at least 0.3 of a second if you do that. So be smart about it. Is that exactly what I said at the beginning of this video was think about when you're trying to make a pass or somebody is passing you, how much do you want to fight them? If you're fighting for the lead or you're fighting for a podium position, okay, that makes sense. Fight them because you're already at the front of the field. You're dictating the pace anyway. If you're in 8th, 12th, 15th, and you're trying to catch the people in front of you, fighting somebody is going to hurt your time and you're going to lose touch with those guys ahead the longer that fight lasts. So if you're going to make a move, make sure you can do it quickly. You can get through it quickly. Same thing if you're being attacked. Sometimes it's not always wise just to fight them. Sometimes it's wise just to lift early, let them go by so they can maintain as fast a line as they can, and you can follow them through and then use them to pull you along up to the people that you really want to be racing, which is the people that are even further up the field. So think smart when it comes to that. All right.
So,
yeah.
if somebody pulls a defensive line on you going down the main straight into one and they're in the middle of the track, I take it you're going to take the left side on them.
Yes. So that's actually a fantastic question. So what Mike's saying is, like, let's say that I'm the lead car and there's somebody behind me, and ignore this bit. Let's say that I'm driving down the middle of the track or even the right side of the track. So I'm driving somewhere around here, the defensive line coming in here, because I don't want to be passed. It is going to be super difficult if you're trying to pass this person to pass around the outside into the chicane. It's possible, but depending on the skill level of the person in front, really difficult for the reason I just demonstrated. If they're trying to really defend, and they take a shallow line, they're going to wash out here to where you would be if you try to go too wide through. They're going to be over here. There's going to be no room at this point. So it's just a really low percentage move. What I like to do, if that's the case, if I have no intention to pass, I'll lift early. So I will actually lift probably back here. So my brake marker normally is the bush. But if I lift here, I can extend my brake marker to probably past the 150 board and just save fuel. So I'm not using this much fuel. That will do two things. That'll show the person that's defensive, oh, there's actually a little bit of gap that I'm opening, and he will probably drift back over to the line to try to take a normal line through there. Or he stays, he's slow, I conserve fuel, and I'm back on him anyway through the corner. And then I'm thinking about the only way that I'm going to realistically pass them is in pit lane, because I'll take less fuel because I'm saving fuel. So in those instances where you can't seem to get by somebody because they're driving defensive, you got to do what you can. And the only thing that we can really do at that point is save fuel and jump him in pit lane. If you can save fuel and still stay on his bumper, yeah, your pit stop is going to be half a second to a second and a half shorter than his. You'll jump them and you'll get past them. And then that's the easiest way to make passes, frankly. But yeah, no, somebody really being defensive like that, you can't drive the car for them. And unless they make the other good news is if they're driving that defensive, they're thinking about you as the car behind. And so they're not 100% focused on their line, their race. They're thinking about what you're going to do. And so they're more apt to make a mistake. If I'm coming up on somebody and I see them driving defensive a bunch, I'm grinning because I know I'm in their head. And then what I'll start to do is I'll actually start to like fill their mirrors up. I'll bring my car to the right so they see me on the right, and then I'll move it to the left. And so they don't really know where I'm going and where I'm going to attack from. And then if they're thinking about that, they may miss their brake marker and run through, and then make a mistake. And then it's an easy pass. So, play with it. That's the fun part of racing is racing people. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what I'm hearing is don't try to pass anybody into any of the chicanes.
No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is be smart about it. Because Monza chicanes are so unique. They are a way to encourage passing. But the passing in the Monza chicanes happens before the first chicane, before the first turn. It happens under braking. So if you're super confident on your brakes, and if you're following somebody and they are braking at the 200 board, and you know you can brake close to the 150 board, you're confident that you can get that done, brake at the 150 board. You will be past them before the turn-in point. And at that point, it's your corner. You're off to the races. But if you're following somebody and they are threshold braking every time and they're making it sick and they're braking later than you, you have no chance in hell to try to outbrake them. And so if you go too wide into the corner with them, where are you going to be? You're going to be too wide in a spot that only really allows for one card, one wide. There's going to be contact. You're risking contact. And then, like I said, at best, you're just slow. So be smart about it. You can set people up. You can get in people's heads. You can watch how they drive to see where they're slow and where your advantages are. Exploit your advantages or exploit your strengths. Minimize your weaknesses. And go where it makes sense to go. But yeah, that's the essence of the Cup car is who can brake the best. Frankly, that's fast drivers in the Cup car are the best at modulating their brakes. And if you can brake really well in this car, you'll have a really good race at Monza, because that's what this track almost all is. It's just really good braking. So I would focus on that pretty hard. Hope that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to show real quick is like what this braking looks like coming into turn one. So if I do my little boop telemetry. So the brake pedal pressure is right here where my mouse is. This is what I mean by the brake. So what I said, when you first go to brake, you're going like 165 miles an hour. That's where you have the most aerodynamics. That's where you have the most grip in the car. You can hit that brake pedal really hard before you lock up. And then as the car is slowing down, you're going to have to start slowly letting off the car even before you've started your turn-in. My turn-in point is right here. So if we go to that in the video, boom. From here all the way to here is straight line braking. That's this line right here is my steering angle. I haven't moved my hands at all. But notice my brake pedal is slowly bleeding off. Is because as I bleed off speed, I'm getting less aero, which means there's less grip in the car. If I kept my brakes at 85% all the way until I started turning the wheel, so up here, at about this point, my wheels would start to lock up, and I would have lock up, and I would go through the corner. So you have to start, if you're really threshold braking, you have to start releasing the brakes as the car slows down. And then as I turn the wheel, I'm asking the tires to turn in addition to brake. So I'm trail braking. That's where my brake pedal is trailing down to 0. As I turn the wheel, I'm releasing the brakes to allow the tires to turn. So I'm saying, tires, I don't want you to do only braking. I also want you to turn. So I'm going to relieve brake pressure so you can have lateral grip, so you can start turning it. So that's what that looks like. Firm initial pedal, that's my maximum pressure. Slowly bleed it off, and then trail brake down here. The other thing I wanted to show was when I go through here and I go through the left-hander here, I actually will sometimes touch the brake at this point right here. And all that is, it's very light. What is 20%? All that is to set some weight on the nose of the car to put it on the front tires so they grip a little bit more. So I can get a little bit more, it's called pointiness, get a little bit more bite from the front end, from the front axle, so the car will actually turn down to this really tight left-hander to give me a better angle coming out. So there is my brakes right there. So I'm hitting the brakes just a little bit just to get some weight on that nose to get that turn, and then I can accelerate coming out. And so that's what it looks like in telemetry. Okay, unless anybody has any other questions, that's pretty much all I had. Have fun. I guess I will say I don't know too much about it. I'm not on the steering committee or anything. But there's a grid pass that is available for future races. in PCA. And the future races, I believe, are like the series racing, the team races, the kind of major races that we have in PCA. Things like Arrive and Drive and other kind of more exhibition type races don't need the grid pass. But if you want to compete in season 13, 14, etc., and other major PCA races, check out the grid pass. It's a annual fee, just so we can maintain the high quality of stewardship and also broadcasts that we've come to love in PCA, and help support the club that we all know and love, and that gives us, in my opinion, some of the best racing in iRacing, and help support them. Consider it buying your grid pass so you can continue to be engaged and continue to race in these high profile races that we put on. So with that, I believe there are practice sessions going up, or EDEs and stuff like that. Go jump in there, try it out. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'll hang out for a few minutes. If you think of a question later on, feel free to message me up on Discord, and I'm happy to take a look or sit down and chat with you about specifics. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you guys.
Thanks, Chris. And I second get the grid pass. This is a great club, and